Hello. In case you're wondering about the friend I mentioned in a previous video, he's in hospital. He had a really bad asthma attack and they're keeping him in for a day or so while they get that under control, and I'm going to be visiting him a bit later on. Meanwhile, I'm going to read to you just a straight post from Matt Goodwin which appeared on X because, well, there's not much else to say about this situation. And I'll do that after I tell you I'm Granniopteryx and I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. Matt Goodwin was sent this by an ex-Conservative MP for Telford called Lucy Allan. She was the MP for Telford from 2015 to 2024. So here we have a good example of what happened to a Conservative MP who tried to do something about the, at the time, grooming gang scandal. I think now I can refer to it as rape gangs. This is what happened when she tried to investigate grooming gangs. This is Lucy Allan talking. The horrific crimes perpetrated against vulnerable girls in towns and cities across our country by groups of Pakistani men are now finally out in the open. I feel a huge sense of relief that finally child sexual exploitation can no longer be hidden away as a shameful secret by those in authority. It's been a long and struggle to get here. When I started speaking out in Parliament about CSE in 2016, having met Telford victims, the pushback was swift and robust. So here you have Lucy Allan talking about this in Parliament, and did the machinery of the state grind into action and start to deal with the situation? Well, not exactly. There was a coordinated official response by people in positions of power. The Telford council leader, now Telford's Labour MP, Sean Davis, immediately published a letter to the Home Secretary stating that no inquiry into CSE was necessary. He backed up his assertion with claims that we now know were false. Multiple senior figures were asked to be co-signatories to his claims to lend authority to them, and they all readily agreed. So you see, this was a Labour council, and I did say in my other email that what happened was the Conservatives were afraid of being seen as, the nasty party, or possibly the Nazi party. And so when a Conservative MP started to talk about such things, all the people in the Labour Council clumped together to call her a Nazi. Basically, I mean, they might not have used that word. What they did accuse her of was this. The council leader and his councillors, instead of trying to right wrongs, set about discrediting the messengers. Not just me, but investigative journalists and victims, even claiming one victim was coming forward so she could sell her story. I was accused of lying, causing division. Oh yeah, causing division. Doesn't that sound vaguely religious? I believe there is some Muslim law about punishment for people who sow dissension in the land, or in other words, cause division. Isn't that interesting? She was accused of lying, causing division, racism, that's the Nazi bit, being unbalanced, hysterical woman in other words, irrational, stupid, and motivated not by desire to help victims but to score political points. Now that scoring political points is a political argument, but almost everything else that she says she was accused of are arguments involved in Muslim jurisprudence. For instance, lying, that's most legal things. Causing division is a specifically Muslim crime. Of course, racism, yeah. And then there were all the ones being unbalanced, irrational and stupid, which is the attitude that Islam has to women in general. As Muhammad himself said that women are deficient in understanding, which is why they have to have male guardians all the time. This narrative was relentlessly pushed for as long as I campaigned on the issue. It had the intended effect of ensuring that the voice I sought to be for victims would not be heard. Now, I'm pointing out that the Labour Council did this to her. But did she get any respect or honour or, support from the Conservative Party? Well, so far I haven't seen any. Early on, I had an unexpected visit from the Chief Constable of West Mercia Police and the Police and Crime Commissioner. Now, I don't know whether she means those were two people or one person with two jobs. The Chief Constable was disparaging about Rotherham MP Sarah Champion. She was one of the other outspoken MPs, suggesting she was exaggerating the issue and was discredited. He said, this is the Chief Constable, "You wouldn't want to be known as a troublemaker like Sarah Champion. It will harm your reputation and career." Now, somebody must have sent the Chief Constable to say that to her. Why would a Chief Constable of a police force be worried about Lucy Allan's career? So that sounds to me like it came from the Conservative Party. But it might just as easily have been something that the Labour Party, well, they know their politics, don't they? They might have told him to say that. I don't know who did, but I'm quite sure somebody on high sent him there. It's certainly possible that the Labour Council spoke to the Labour head office, whoever was in charge at the time. 2016, was that Jeremy Corbyn? Hang on, I'm going to go and check that out. Yeah, right. That was Jeremy Corbyn was in charge of the Labour Party at that time. Quelle surprise. The then newly minted Junior Minister for Safeguarding, Vicky Atkins MP, told me not to speak to the media on the subject as you do not understand the issues. So this is where the Conservative Party decided to squash the information. And then Lucy Allan was summoned by Conservative peer Baroness Warsi to explain herself. Then there was the repeated refrain that as 90% of the child abuse is committed by white men in domestic settings, why didn't I concern myself with that, as it was a more significant problem? I would like to address that. You see, there's something we have to remember. More white men are committing various sorts of domestic and child abuse because there are more white men in the country. The difference here is that each white man doing horrible crimes is, generally speaking, there might be one or two exceptions, but it's not common, is doing this on his own. It's one single psychopath after another. With the Pakistani rape gangs, it's a coordinated criminal effort, like a family business. That's the difference. Okay, this was a blatant denial of the existence of groups of interrelated men of Pakistani heritage preying on young girls at school gates, in takeaways, taxis and playgrounds. They did not want to know. But you see, the Conservatives didn't want to know either. Again, as I said in a previous video, I don't think that was a vote thing. With the Labour Party, it was certainly a vote thing. But with the Conservatives, it was just simple political cowardice. They didn't want to be called nasty names. And they knew that the first thing that would happen would be that the Labour Party would call them nasty names. And those nasty names would be repeated by the media. The BBC would be only too glad to say that the Conservatives were pursuing some sort of a racist policy, because that's the BBC line. And it's not just the BBC. You get it in Sky, not Sky Australia, but Sky here in the UK, and all the other stuff. And even it would leak over into American media as well. And the Conservative Party just didn't want that sort of aggro. They should have embraced it, of course, but they didn't. And because they were political cowards, the Conservative Party is just a shadow of what it has been. Anyway, let's carry on. Then there was the appalling victim blaming, referring always to the victim's risky behaviours and the fact that victims had sought contact with multiple males. In one case, a young victim was described to me by police as having been in contact with 53 different Asian males, as if it were by choice. Illustrating complete denial that these men were related to each other through cousin marriage and were engaged in a joint enterprise. It was a family business. I thought the desire by the authorities to hush it up was to disguise shortcomings in the organisations they led, but now I know it wasn't just that. The people in power believed that being honest about what had happened would fuel racial tensions. Yeah, it might do, but I think it had more to do, as I said, with my personal opinion. Of course, Miss Allan might know better than me, but I feel in the case of the Labour Party, it was to do with losing votes, and in the Conservative Party, it was to do with losing face. I now know that this was a line pushed by Home Office officials themselves. Right, these are the civil servants. Now, the civil service has been heavily infiltrated by various people with political agendas. They're supposed to be neutral, and we now know they are not. Junior ministers, both Conservative and Labour, have spun the same lines almost word for word, clearly at the behest of the civil servants. So they were being given handouts by the civil servants, and that was coordinated within the civil service. People have accused Telford council leader of a cover-up. It's more complicated than that. His public statement saying no inquiry was necessary was signed by him, but I do not believe it was written by him. Again, this is what Lucy Allan is saying. Whilst he may have been willing to collude with officials to protect his career, he was not the instigator of the pretense. Public denial of these horrific crimes was the standard response by officials both locally and in Whitehall. I want to remind you that this chap is now the MP representing Telford. And Lucy Allan, who was trying to do something about a horrific situation, was booted out by the voters of Telford. Telford, I hope you're proud of yourselves. OK, it takes bravery for a politician to speak up, and the repercussions can be costly. Well, they did her out of a job, didn't they? If Telford's council leader had been courageous, if he'd done the right thing, it is unlikely he would be in Parliament now sitting on the Home Affairs Selectman. He's actually got a post, yeah, tasked with holding the Home Office to account, no less. Perhaps it was more cowardice and self-interest than cover-up. Yeah, cowardice has a lot to do with all of this. The denial strategy. Okay, so Telford, let's have a look. Here we are. Sean Davis MP. Sean Davis MP is an MP having been a council leader. He's elevated to being an MP and now he's on a parliamentary select committee on the strength of denying that little girls were being raped. Whether he knew that for sure or not, it was politically expedient for him to deny it, and that's what he did. And now he is a member of parliament, and the person who was trying to fight for these little girls is out on her ear. So, Telford, you voted him in. I'd like to say you got what you deserved. The problem is that it's the little girls who are paying the price of your stupidity. Yeah, really, stupidity and ideology. Now, voting Conservative was very hard in the last elections. But Lucy Allan, one of the few Conservative MPs who really should have been returned to office. And instead, you got a political nodding dog. Sean Davis, MP. Crikey, did I get his name right? Let's have a look. Yep, there we are. Okay. So, Allan continues. The denial strategy may be motivated by good intentions, you know, if you're convinced that it stops fueling racial tensions. But it is fatally flawed. At best, it's an insult to victims and to all fair-minded people. At worst, it's deeply divisive, dishonest policy that destroys our social fabric and the social contract between state and individual. Yeah, and of course, like with most of these things, when you put off dealing with them, they just get worse. I might tell you that my friend who I carted off to hospital yesterday, I had been telling him for, well, days, a couple of weeks, that asthma was getting worse. Oh no, I'll see the doctor, I'll make an appointment, something like that. And it just got worse and worse. And now the poor old chap's in hospital, where I'm sure he didn't want to be. And it's the same sort of thing. You put this off and now there's the explosion, isn't there? I'm not calling for violence, by the way. I'm talking about an explosion of public opinion. Nobody is going to forget this. And unfortunately for Keir Starmer, even though the Conservatives are at least partly to blame, the fact is that nobody's going to forgive the Labour Party for this, because we have to also remember that it seems to have been happening mostly in Labour councils. That's the impression I've got. If you've got better figures on that, let me know in the comments. Okay, right. Officials have actively sought to hide reality from politicians and well, yeah, that's true. But you get little, politicians all have to give surgeries. There will have been people turning up with these stories and the politicians were not following them up. And like with Miss Allan, they probably weren't following them up because they were being told not to. It looks like Miss Allan wasn't taking notice of this, but there would have been plenty who did. Officials have actively sought to hide reality from politicians, and too many politicians are willing to collude. We now know we have been routinely lied to by the state, and now we can no longer trust the state. So community cohesion, not fueling racial tensions, look what's happened. Look where we've got to. And then the thing at the bottom says, Lucy Allan was the Conservative MP for Telford 2015 to 2024 and a campaigner on child sexual exploitation throughout her time in Parliament. Well, Parliament's really lost in not having her there. We've all lost. There will be plenty of children in Telford who have lost as well, because I don't think Sean Davis is going to do that much. He has too much of his eyes on the prize, doesn't he, by the looks of things? OK, so that's the message that Lucy Allan sent to Matt Goodwin. Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.